Recently, we were studying islands in year 1, and it was a really exciting time for those 5 and 6-year-olds to be thinking about islands and learning their geography and finding what makes an island and what's the difference between an island and a continent, and all those things that were really interesting to them. But what really got them interested was investigating different islands that they themselves had visited with their families. It was a great way in for these children who'd had an opportunity to travel, and they were able to start deciding what is an island, what are the features of islands, how are islands made, and they were able to come up with projects that really connected with their personal lives. So when we had our exit point, when the children were showing their parents and their friends what they had learned, what they showed their friends was a wide range of different projects. And some of them had done models, some of them had done islands made out of found objects, some of them had made posters or photographic montage of a trip they took to an island. It was really fascinating to see how they entered into that work. At the same time, our year 6 students were taking another look at islands, but this time from a global point of view, in looking at Earth first as an island in space. And you know that image, and it's so inspiring, the image of that beautiful blue marble floating in space. And to be talking to the children who had learned about islands when they were younger, that we too, all together, are on this same island. And then, of course, they moved on to study individual islands with a very laser-like focus on the problem of rising sea levels. And then worked to come up with solutions for how we can address the problems of rising sea levels and how that is so hugely impacting island nations around the world. I wanted to mention one other recent unit that the year 4s did, and that was on fashion, which is something that seems extremely odd for a school to be having. We're doing a unit on fashion, and yet it is such a powerful unit with kids because, for one thing, they all want to like what they're wearing, and so it's a thing with children, and they understand it very instinctively and very young. And so in this particular unit, the children first looked at what is fashion and how is it different culturally and how is it different by the time period that you're living in, or maybe the age you are. So they looked at those things, they looked at fabrics, they looked at all the things that make fashion. And then they also brought in a hat designer who showed them how to make hats, which was a huge thing. I learned about how you actually form a hat on a mannequin's head. That was super interesting. But what they really, really connected with, our older students were looking at labels in each other's clothes, and they were recording where their clothing was made. And as we know, there's lots of clothing that's made in Asia, but the children were finding Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and then what they did with that when they found out where their clothing was made was to try to backtrack to where the clothing is made and to try to discover and imagine the hands and the lives that went in to creating the clothing that they are wearing on that day. It's a really powerful learning opportunity. But these things take time, and they need time to ask these questions, and they need time to figure out what they're curious about. And so our units are also kind of long. We're not zipping through a unit on fashion. We're going to spend 6 to 8 weeks on it. But it allows for rich, thoughtful, inquiry-based learning.